Hi there, Nydia B. Welcome back. To those who are familiar with me, my name is Nydia B, and I have started a YouTube channel which will be looking at literature that I love. The first few videos or the themes that I'm going to be looking at for a while will be spiritual literature, but I will be expanding to other areas, fictional and non-fictional. So, as you can see from the title of this video, I'm going to be doing a deep dive on Eckhart Tolle, and the reason I'm doing a deep dive on this particular author is because he has been instrumental in some life-changing events in my life, and I absolutely love his work. I love listening to him. He is of German nationality and background, as I recall. He lived in the UK for a while, studied at University College London. He went through a deep spiritual awakening in his late 20s whilst in London studying. He wrote about it, and he was also teaching, I think, as well. He was an associate professor or professor at that point already. But he also wrote about his experience, how it affected him. And currently, as I recall, Eckhart Tolle is now residing in North America, but he is a worldwide author, very famous, very well known in the New Age circuit. But I personally think he's just amazing in being able to lift some of the theories, but also thoughts from thousands of years ago and bring them into the modern day. So I'm going to look at 5 pieces of works of his. He has done others, but these are his 5 main books that I think are more geared towards the mainstream. And then I think he's also done a few books which are more for children. But the 5 that I'm going to be, well, actually I'm going to look at his theory, but the ones that I'm going to be referring to are The Power of Now, which is his first book, Practicing the Power of Now, which takes little pieces, nuggets from The Power of Now, Stillness Speaks, which is one of my favorites, which is just quotes on practicing the power of now. And then finally, A New Earth, which takes his theory to a global level. And then Oneness with All Life, which is basically excerpts from A New Earth. So, right, got that right. So, again, I'll be able to hold these up. There you go. These are the 5 that I'm referring to. I will link him below. He is an amazing author, so I would recommend checking out his website. Okay, so what have I picked up from his messages, and what have I learned, and why is he so fundamental, and why would I recommend him to others? And also the question I'm going to pose for those that are tuning in is, do you like Eckhart Tolle, or have you found him really empowering and useful for your development, or would you want to check him out after this video, or check out his work after this video, or is there another author that brings you into the present day, the way and the present moment, specifically that theory, specifically those kind of like terminologies I'm going to zone in on here. And if you do, why do you prefer looking at them, he, she, them, whoever it is? I would love to hear more from you. So thank you. Okay, so just referring some of my notes. So for me, Eckhart Tolle is very good at really isolating on the fact that we can, as people, just human beings, really identify with our minds and get caught up with the story in our mind. And the central theme that I always pick up on from him, the very first component, is to disidentify with the mind, to be able to step away from it. And one of the most powerful recollections I have is when he mentioned that we might have a stream of consciousness, or a stream of thought, that we can observe. And I recall just having this image of clouds and realizing that my thoughts are like clouds. They just keep coming, they keep coming. And as soon as one thought goes, another one comes, and it's just like, what is this? And I started to realize many years ago in my life that I can be really, really caught up in what I'm thinking. And moreover, I can really start to believe what I think and be associated with it and think that this is the whole of my being. And one of the things that I found very incredible when I was reading The Power of Now was the importance of being able to just question whether or not, these thoughts are really helping me. At the time they weren't. But the other thing that I recall from reading this book was that, the first time I read it, I actually struggled. And I have to say that I went through the first few pages and I couldn't go further. And then a few years later, I read it again and I thought, okay. A few years later, I read it again. And I think it was over a period of time when I began to really understand the suffering that's caused by my thoughts. And he calls the thoughts, the ego and the pain body. And the fact that the pain body actually is something that lives, it even lives beyond the individual, but it's almost like myself connects to that pain body. And the strength of me connecting to that pain is overwhelming. And the examples that I really began to realize was in my everyday life. I would go through a situation, for example, at work or a neighbor or something, and I could end up feeling incredibly offended. And when I started to use the power of now and the theory that Eckhart Tolle had described, I began to realize that I didn't have to believe all the thoughts that were in my head, nor have to suffer the full pain of feeling offended. And that was really incredible to be able to step away from that. What I also realized, and Eckhart Tolle talks about this, is that when I am not in the now, which happens very often, of course, but there is a past and there is a future. When I'm caught up in my past or my future, or both at the same time, I can actually end up suffering. And going back to the example of feeling offended by, let's say, a co-worker, what can happen to me, or what was happening to me, was that I could take what the incident was from a day ago or a week ago or even last year or whatever, and then just ruminate on it and just go over it again and again. So that's my past. And now I'm living in the past. And what made it worse was that then I would think, well, when tomorrow comes, I might experience that again. So now I'm living in the future. And what Eckhart Tolle does is piece by piece is he helps a person be able to break down what it is to come into today and the power of being in the present moment, which is I am at peace and everything is fine. It's a different way of looking at it, because when I'm in the present moment, I can see that, well, actually nothing is happening really. So it was a really, really interesting moment for me where I began to realize, and some people have said since then that, is it that we then ignore the injustices and what happens? And of course not. It's not about being passive. For me, it's about being present. And being present means that I don't have to live in the pain of yesterday, nor project and live in the fears of tomorrow. And that was a really, really powerful moment for me. I recall in my late 20s, early 30s, starting to really discover that and implement that into my life. And it's never been perfect, and it still isn't. But it became a way for me to find some form of sanity and soundness of mind in my everyday living. So that was one of the main nuggets that I picked up from The Power of Now. And one of the things that I've also learnt from looking at his work is, what he calls the unpleasantness of not being able to allow things to be what they are. The unpleasantness, the fight within, the anger, the pain and the remorse that comes with it, or the guilt or the shame, or however. There are just so many different ways we can describe that. But when I can't accept what the present moment is, I end up with a lot of misery in that sense. And what Eckhart Tolle has done is beautifully been able to describe how that actually plays out in life, and how we can, or I can, end up living from a point of shame or anger or resentment rather than a point of present peace, or living from a point of fear of the future or paranoia or control of the future, rather than again living from a point of present peace. And so for me, he was very, very fundamental in helping me to see that the present moment is a point of power. So yeah, this was fundamental. And his other two works that accompany this specific book, Practicing the Power of Now and also Stillness Speaks, I would also recommend, because again, they're just really good useful tools if you want little pieces of coming into the moment today. Then I'll move on to very quickly, which is how that pain body then lives within our society. And I think this is a really interesting topic. I have been going back to Eckhart Tolle over the years. And it just, I began this series just recently, and it just feels as if, now that I look at it, this is just the appropriate time for me to mention a new earth and then oneness with all life. For me as an individual, when I disassociate with my mind, or disidentify, with my mind, that's a better way of putting it, that's what Tolle says, I can at that moment have some peace within me and observe those things around me and the people around me that perhaps they are in their pain too. And that helps me to have actually a better understanding, but also affinity and a connection with the people that I am around, whether it be co-workers, family, friends, a partner, people in my community. Even today, going to the supermarket and just being able to understand that the person next to me might be associated with their pain or their pain body allows me to just think, well, they are where they're at, and have a little bit more compassion because I understand my pain body and where I'm coming from. For me, one of the fundamental changes when I read A New Earth a few years ago was he takes this idea of myself feeling pain, or an individual feeling pain, and being able to step away from it and come into the present time, and for the individual disassociating with their story, he takes that and elevates that to a global level. And how as nations and as people, cultures and so forth, and communities, clusters of people, let me put it this way, also can experience pain. Pain from the past and a fear of the future. And that can also then have an effect on where we are today as a community and a society. And he talks about that in terms of the human consciousness at a global level. He talks about environmental damage. He talks about cultural, historical, religious and so forth, pain that people have felt, and how as a society we need to work together to be able to transcend this, and the oneness of us with our communities and with our environment and the societies we're with. And for me, the last few months and the last weeks have tremendously reminded me of taking Tolle's theory and remembering that collective consciousness and that collective oneness. So, I just wanted to go into a bit of a deep dive. That's what I'm calling this video, a deep dive on Eckhart Tolle. Let me be able to do this again. I really recommend going into his work. I always recommend The Power of Now, his first book, but if you have the chance to read more of his work, I suggest that too. He's an absolute fantastic author. He's also done a lot of videos which are available online if you just need to access them. They're available. I will link as much as I can below. Please like, comment, share. The comments posed to you again are, if you're familiar with this author, what is it about his work that you love or enjoy, or what are the nuggets that you've picked up? And if it's not Eckhart Tolle, other authors that concentrate on being in the now. Again, for me, Louise Hay comes to mind. She's fantastic at that because she talks about, the point of power is in the present moment. I think that's how she places it. And the other one is I spoke about last week as well, as Byron Katie, and she talks about accepting what is. That is part of her terminology. So those two authors also bring it in, but for me today I wanted to focus especially on Eckhart Tolle. He has been a huge influence. I think he will continue to be an influence for me. I'm pretty sure I will be picking up his work and reading it again. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you for listening to this video. Please like, comment and share again, and I'll be bringing more wisdom nuggets or deep dives in the future. Thank you.